Discapacidad Televisión.
¡Hola mundo!
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006.
Hola, bienvenidos a Discapacidad Televisión. Recuerda suscribirte para no perderte los últimos estrenos y programas en vivo. Danos un me gusta, y así nos ayudarás a conocerte mejor, y saber qué programación es tu favorita. Por favor, no te olvides de compartir, así, más personas podrán disfrutar de Discapacidad Televisión y toda su programación. Muchas gracias.
Hola, bienvenidos a Cambiando el Mundo de Personas con Discapacidad. Mi nombre es Raquel Quesada y seré la presentadora del mismo. En el programa hablaremos de la no discriminación, la participación e inclusión plenas y efectiva en la sociedad, a la igualdad de oportunidades de los derechos y a la accesibilidad de las personas con discapacidad, el respeto a la evolución de las facultades de los niños y las niñas con discapacidad y sus derechos a preservar su dignidad, la inclusión, la sensibilidad, la educación, la diversidad. En este programa todos los sábados celebraremos la vida de las personas con discapacidad. Que juntos podemos cambiar el mundo de personas con discapacidad.
Discapacidad Televisión.
¡Hola mundo!
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006. A continuación, Footless EE.UU, más allá de una amputación. Presenta EE.UU BECKWITH. Características de este programa. Audio en inglés, subtítulos en castellano.
Well, hello there, my beautiful, lovely internet friends. It has been just about 4 months now since I had a stroke. I disappeared from the internet because I couldn't do anything but focus on healing. But I wanted to come back because I'm feeling really good today and things have improved. I wanted to give you guys an update, tell you what actually happened, what has occurred since, and fill you in on all the details. This might be a bit of a longer video, so I will just say for anyone who just wants the quick 30-second version, I'm doing a lot better. I'm not back to 100%. I didn't expect I would be, and I have no idea when or if that will occur. But 4 months in, I'm still alive, made it this far. Okay, so beyond the 30-second version, when I woke up this morning knowing I was going to film today and I was really excited to get back to it, and then I tried to start like putting things in words, and like I don't fake anything for the camera, but when you turn a camera on, there's sort of like a certain energy that I'm used to bringing, and I realized this is actually a really difficult thing that happened, a lot of the things that have happened since, where it has left my body and my mind. And I think talking about it will be good, but I remain very overwhelmed by this year and what has occurred. I love how they just switch places. Okay, first and foremost, what actually happened? In my previous video where I very briefly talked about this because I was really out of it still, mentioned that it was an accident in jiu-jitsu. So I have trained in jiu-jitsu on and off for 12 years. It is the love of my life. I was training for a competition, my first one since losing my leg. I was really excited. I was lifting 4 or 5 times a week. I was training 4 or 5 times a week, feeling really good about everything. And I was at a very normal day of training. I happened to be partnered up with someone who was a guy much larger, much stronger, and very inexperienced in the sport. Super common thing. I said yes to rolling, understanding that as a small woman without a leg, those matches are always really difficult, and keeping yourself safe always has to be first and foremost in your mind. So I rolled with him. It was rough, but I thought just like normal, aches and pains, kind of fine. I went into the next match, and about a minute in, out of nowhere, I felt like a baseball bat had been cracked against the back of my skull, like night and day. I was on the ground. I couldn't even lift my head up. The word vertigo doesn't seem to properly encapsulate how dizzy I was, how completely incapable of even opening my eyes, even lifting my head up. I couldn't put words together. There was a lot of head pain associated with it. My whole body was shaking and I couldn't stop it. And that went on for minutes. I had no idea what was happening. No one else had any idea what was happening. It was bad and it was really scary. It probably took me about an hour to be able to eventually sit up, eventually kind of start to form words better. I knew I wasn't good. I knew I was super out of it. My balance was all off, but I was driven home. I remember getting out of the car and I fell on the rocks in front of my house. I was not good. I also was not thinking straight. I did not go to the hospital, didn't go to urgent care, didn't talk to a doctor. I was like, let me just rest. I don't feel good. I'm just going to rest. I've mentioned this before on my channel, but I have had a lot of very unfortunate interactions with doctors and our medical system that has made me incredibly averse to ever going in if I do not absolutely think there is a chance something is actually wrong. So for, I think it was a couple days, I didn't go in. I realized I couldn't really use my hands. They weren't working right. I could move, but it was like they were a second or two too late and then very imprecise. Just this crazy head and neck pain that was beyond what I normally experience. Couldn't form words, stuttering, very out of it, just not good. Eventually, I broke down and scheduled a virtual urgent care, least invasive thing I could think of. I just wanted them to be like, yeah, you probably have a bad migraine, go sleep it off. But within a minute or two of talking to this doctor, she was like, Joe, I need you to get out of this call. Do not drive yourself. Get immediately to the ER. Internally, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be so annoying. I'll have to be there for hours. They're gonna say everything's fine and then just send me home. I shouldn't even be there, but I guess better safe than sorry. So I Ubered into the hospital, which is always such a funny thing to me. I don't know. Explained what was going on, told them, I get bad migraines. I have weird neurological stuff. I think I'm probably fine, but this weird thing happened in jiu-jitsu, and now here's all the things that feel weird. I cannot thank the doctors and nurses and staff at Denver Health. They took things really seriously, and the doctor came back into my room very serious, which is always off-putting as a patient, but he told me that they had seen something and that I was going to be admitted to the ICU. I had a vertebral artery dissection, which basically means that one of the arteries in my neck, which supply oxygen and blood to your brain, had been very damaged. Totally forgot to tie it back together. I think that it was that first roll with the big guy where it was pretty rough, that I believe my neck was damaged, and then it probably took a few minutes for the clot to form, then be released. That's my best guess anyways. And these things can cause strokes. There were indications that I had one. So everything went into high speed very quickly. I was admitted, put on medications to stop any future strokes, things like that. And an MRI later that night confirmed that I had had a stroke to my occipital cerebellar area, the right side of the back of my brain, which controls things like balance, coordination, vision. Generally, I found really affected my brain with things like memory, word finding, word forming, following conversation, just all of that. So I was in the ICU for a few days. I was in the hospital for a few days. And then I was sent home with very stern warnings from multiple neurologists because of the injury that caused the stroke. I was not out of the woods yet. If I did anything, it could cause another stroke, and that could be really bad. So for the next 3 months, I was told to do nothing, to go for short, supervised walks with someone else next to me who could like catch me if need be, not to lift anything heavier than maybe a gallon of milk, nothing overhead, no forms of exercise. And so I went from training for a jiu-jitsu competition to literally sitting on my couch right over there, trying to begin the healing process physically and emotionally. I felt awful. Healing didn't even feel like it was happening. Everything is so slow. I had to keep reminding myself that everything is temporary. Being stuck at home alone without any of the tools that I used to rely on to get through things was very difficult. I couldn't have my big dog, Leo, home for the first 2 months because doctors said, you know, he's a 90-pound dog. He could knock you over. That cannot happen. And so he actually stayed with his trainer who he was with when I had my stroke. She was absolutely incredible. I'm going to put her information down below if you're looking for a good dog trainer in Colorado Springs. And then to encapsulate a lot of time in a single sentence, I tried to get better, right? I went to physical therapy. I went to occupational therapy. I went for incredibly short walks every day. Like I couldn't walk further than like, I don't know, a couple hundred feet without being so off balance and so dizzy and so out of it that I had to sit down and like lay down for the rest of the day, close my eyes. My vision got very affected where everything was like double vision, blurry. It felt like my eyes weren't tracking right. Screens were really difficult. I want to say real quick, I could not have gotten through that time without the support of a lot of people in my life, and also without the incredible generosity that a lot of people showed me from my last video. I wasn't able to work for quite some time, and the amount of generosity that was shown to me from you guys, can't tell you how much that helped so I could actually like try to heal. I feel so lucky and so grateful. Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, I had sort of the post 3-month follow-up, you know, CT scan imaging. Where are we now? What does moving forward look like? And I got some good news and some bad news. Looks like healing is taking place the way that it should. That artery is, you know, still damaged, but it's healing the parts of my brain that are now just black holes on images. Because apparently, I believe how it works is the gray matter dies. You know, when a stroke happens, you don't get oxygen to that part of your brain, and then it will like fill with fluid. Oh my God, looking at my MRI was crazy because there's just these black holes in my cerebellum. The very difficult news, for me anyways, is that if I have an interest in staying alive, I can never do jiu-jitsu again. And there are other activity restrictions. When I say that I love that sport, it's not just like a cool hobby, right? If you were to ask me to describe myself, I'd probably say, hi, I'm Joe. I'm a public speaker and I do jiu-jitsu. That's like what comes to mind. It was a huge part of my identity. I didn't talk about it a lot online because when I was there, I was just there. Like that was just for me. And I have never found a sport that made me feel so free, especially after losing my leg. That is the only place in the entire world I do not feel disabled. It does not feel like a disadvantage. Obviously it was, but the way that I was like free of my prosthetic leg usually didn't cause additional pain. And I learned how to use my body, my different body, as a weapon, right? Figured out how to do things no one else could do and could hold my own against able-bodied people. For years going through a lot of stuff in life, it has sustained me. And I'm no longer 20 and think I'm invincible. So I did get second opinions for my own peace of mind, but I will not be returning to the mats. Now, nothing will ever replace that sport for me. But in being like, so what do I do with myself? How do I find other things that really help my mental health and maybe fill some of those needs that jiu-jitsu was filling for me? I have decided I'm going to become a dancer. Keep in mind that I was not super coordinated or balanced before there were holes in my brain that deal with balance and coordination. But partnered dancing, so beautiful and so cool to me. Like learning how to like improv and adjust to someone else's movement, all of that brings me a lot of joy. And so as on days that feel like I'm able to, I've begun going to dance classes and dances. It works on a lot of those functions of my brain that experience deficits from the stroke, so it's therapeutic in a number of different ways. As I grieve losses, it's also cool to find new things. So now it is 4 months later. You might be able to tell if you watched the last video that I sure look like I am doing a lot better, and I am. Those first 3 months of healing, doctors said that they would be really important, and oh my God, they were. I would say it probably took almost exactly 3 months until I was like, I think I feel like a person, where I would like have moments through the day where I was like, I just had a whole conversation with someone and I was able to track it. Like I wasn't stuttering over my words. Okay, cool. Maybe there is hope. And I feel like a lot of pieces of healing, all those weeks of doing literally nothing, sort of all came together a few weeks ago. And I started feeling just so much better. Miles to go, but so much better. I kind of feel like I'm back to 75%. It varies on the day, especially for short periods of time. I feel like me. I look like me. I'm able to act like me. But there's so much going on in my brain to compensate for the damage that was done that I get tired really easy. I get exhausted really easily. I get headaches all the time. Lights, sounds, stimulus. Some days are really difficult. Other days, totally fine. Like today, I even put a light on for this video and it doesn't bother me, which is mind-blowing considering how things were just a few weeks ago even. I've noticed that social situations by far are the most difficult, like trying to track more than one person talking to me at a time. I just like get super out of it, can't follow conversation, have to like tap out and go home. But I recognize that this is going to be a long process. A lot of the continued effects are things that you can't see. You know, I can walk in a straight line, I can do things, I look sort of balanced, sort of coordinated. I can speak pretty normally a lot of the times, but there's so much that's going on in my brain to be able to do that. I still have a lot of issues with vision and balance, that dizziness, a lot of nausea, just stuff that's going on in the background that I think will take a very long time for continued healing to take place. Also, one thing I have not been able to return to after stroke, well, is drawing. I absolutely love drawing, but the stroke definitely affected like the fine motor control. So I can still draw, I can still color, but straight lines, coloring a line, anything like that is just really frustrating because it's hard. So art is no longer like a form of relaxation and everything. It's like frustrating. So I'm working on it as part of therapy, and hopefully one day it will get back to just being enjoyable and maybe I'll be able to fully control these guys. Recovery from a stroke like this is not measured in weeks or months, especially after the first few months. It's measured in years. So it's going to be a while, and I'm going to continue working on that, continue figuring out what I'm capable of. From an emotional perspective, as I was going through all of this, I knew that it was a big deal. I knew that a lot of things had changed. I knew that there were losses, things that were really scary. And I kind of figured that as I began returning to quote unquote normal life, that a lot of the emotions from all of that might hit, because it just felt like everything was on hold for 3 months. Everything was on pause. I was in this weird twilight zone of every day being the same, mostly just being at home or doctor's appointments, crocheting, feeling really not good. And then as I started being like, oh, I can drive, I can, you know, go do this thing. I think I was correct in thinking that that is when a lot of the emotions from what has happened would hit. I will say right now, I am firmly planted in denial. I know this, my therapist knows this. I don't really want to process or think about a lot of the things that have occurred or how it's affected me or how my life is permanently altered along with my brain. Honestly, I don't think I'm ready to come to terms with some of the permanent, or at least permanent for the foreseeable future, you know, how this has altered my life and my everyday experience and my health. And that's really all I can say for the time being, because I don't have any more words yet. Everything felt like it was moving in the right direction until midnight, about a week and a half ago, when I stood up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And suddenly that same feeling that I had when I had the stroke started hitting out of nowhere. Like 0 to 60, I realized I couldn't stand up straight, couldn't keep my balance. I was really struggling to think straight, put words together. I was just super out of it. I was having difficulty controlling half of my body. I had enough presence to be able to call 911, get an ambulance here. They got me into the hospital pretty quickly. Initially, they did think that it was possibly a second stroke. At one point, I couldn't move at all. Like they would have me try to hold my arm up or try to hold my leg up, and it would just, I couldn't do it. I couldn't roll over on my own. Not gonna lie, I did actually think I was dying. I have never had that experience. Like I've had a lot of situations where I realized it was near death or I could have died, but I've never thought in the moment, oh my God, I'm not gonna like get to say bye to people. Felt like I felt myself slipping away. And I think a lot of that was driven by the terror of a second stroke happening and knowing that my odds of surviving that would be very low, and or the damage that it would do to me would be very extensive. Pretty immediately, they put me on this crazy blood thinner called TNK that will like dissolve everything in your body. Like if you're having a stroke, blood clots, things like that. After a lot of tests and a few days in the hospital, they determined either the blood clot broke up, the medicine did its job very effectively, or more likely I had a hemiplegic migraine, which mimics the symptoms of a stroke. It's possible that with everything that's happened to my brain in the last few months, you know, never having that kind of a migraine again, maybe I'm more prone to having them. Within a couple days it passed, I was able to go home. A few more days of recovery, I'm feeling good again. Moving forward, I thought I was going to have a good sentence to like encapsulate moving forward. I don't. I feel like everything is very much moment by moment, day by day. I've done a very good job of listening to my body, trying to pace myself, following doctor's orders to a T. As I am able to, I will be returning to the internet, returning to work slowly but surely, which I'm very excited for because it feels like it's time at least to, you know, ease back into it. I'm going to keep taking it day by day, and eventually I will move out of denial and process things. With that being said, I feel my brain starting to fade a little bit. My dogs are really wanting to go outside. So I'm gonna end this video here. I watched all the way. Gosh, thank you. I think I talked a really long time. But yeah, I think you can expect to see more videos in the near future, which I'm very excited for because I've missed it a whole lot. I've missed you guys. To you, my beautiful, lovely internet friend, thank you so much for spending a few minutes out of your day here with me today, hearing my story. You could be anywhere else in the world doing anything, but you chose to hang out with me for a few minutes. I truly appreciate that. I love you guys. I'm thinking about you, and I will see you in the next video. It's been a long time since I got to say that. For 3 decades, I've thought that this is something that everybody did all of the time, that it was normal to have your brain running beyond its maximum capacity, taking in every possible piece of information, reading people's body language, predicting what they're thinking, what they're saying before they're saying it, reviewing every possible bit that I know about that human and trying to properly form my words, to edit myself before I've even said anything, to have 7 different versions of the same conversation at the same time to make sure I am choosing the best course, the one that makes the most sense, the one that is safest, the one that makes people most comfortable, and is exhausting. I've recently realized that maybe everybody doesn't do that. Weird. Hello there, my beautiful internet friends. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I wanted to expose myself a little bit in this video. I talk about a lot of vulnerable, real things on this channel. I've always made a point of that. I've always tried to be authentic and real, which we'll be talking about. But I think that comes a lot easier to me on camera than it does in real life, because when I am talking to you, you're watching me on your phone, you're watching me on your TV, what you're seeing is me. This is who I actually am, but it is me edited. And when I talk to people in real life, I am editing everything I say in my head, before I say it, after I've said it, before I've even thought it, 24/7. It's something that is such an ingrained, natural part of me that I don't think I've been aware of it up until this year. Growing up as a kid, I had 2 very loving parents, but there was a lot of conflict in my household. And I learned from a very young age how uncomfortable and like emotionally unsafe that was. I observed what was happening and I became incredibly talented at keeping the peace. I took on the role of peacekeeper and trying to diffuse situations before they even started, knowing and like being so dialed into everyone's like breath and tone and movement, and being able to predict exactly what was going to happen around me based on one person's movement or sentence, and then how do I get in there to diffuse it before it goes any further. For the record, I wasn't raised in like a horribly abusive household or anything like that. It was just there were times that were filled with a lot of conflict, and so I developed these skills at mitigating that so well, but unfortunately I think they just never stopped functioning all the time. And being able to read people, being able to read social situations, have a good idea of what's going on, be able to bring people back to peace, diffuse conflict, those are all good skills to have in your tool bag, but I'm coming to realize that they are not good skills to utilize all of the time. I recently had a conversation with my therapist where she surprised me by saying, you know, you've been coming here for 2.5 years now. I know you pretty well, but I actually don't think that I know you pretty well. I wonder how much of yourself you actually show even here. I wonder how much you are editing every word that you say before you say it. And I wonder if there's anywhere that you can truly be yourself with people. I wonder if you even know how to do that. And it really took me aback because I was like, no, I'm an authentic, genuine, real person. People tell me that all the time. But as I'm forming these words, I am running them through like 4 or 5 different tones in my head. I'm being very observant of my facial expression. Like, should I keep eye contact while I'm saying this? Would that convey better the message, or should I not? What am I doing with my body language? How am I using these words to answer this question? And in that moment, I realized I do this all the time. Like all the time when I have another person around me. If my brain was a computer, it would be running hot. It would be running on overdrive. You'd hear all those fans kick in because I am not having a conversation with someone. I'm having 6 or 7 or 8 different versions of that conversation. I am so aware of facial expressions and how I look and how I present myself and what I'm saying and what they're saying, how they're receiving it. Halfway through the sentence, I'm monitoring their reactions and their facial expressions to it and what I know about them and if that's gonna click well and should I say this in a different way. And as I'm putting this into words, it sounds exhausting because it is. In the middle of and before I'm forming words and I'm listening to people, it's something that goes on all of the time. And I think more than anything, this isn't just something that happens in like new social situations where you might be super aware of like, hey, it's great to meet you. Like, I'm supposed to smile, I'm supposed to be pleasant, okay, cool. It's something that happens with literally everybody. People who are very close to me, people who I've known for decades of my life, people I've known my entire life. I am always running this internal filtering, monitoring, computers going at full speed. Just, this is the movement that my head feels like when I think about talking. It's trying to filter so much information and simultaneously manage the possible perception of me, of what I'm saying, of how I'm interacting in this conversation. And as I thought about it recently, honestly, one of the biggest consequences of that is that when your brain is trying to run all of these scenarios and adjusting and trying to predict reactions and peacekeep before things happen and take all this information consciously in and try to sort through it and manage it and output the proper way and manage my bodily and facial expressions consciously at the same time, there is absolutely no room left for real expression, for actually being authentic. And I do try to like calm that stuff down to present a version of myself that is actually true, but it is so hard to do that. It is so hard when my brain is so overwhelmed with trying to manage all of these things going on in my brain and trying to edit myself constantly that I have sacrificed knowing who I am and even knowing what I want to say for the sake of this program that is running in my brain. I am trying so hard, even in relaxed social situations, to actively manage a situation or a perception or a conversation, to do the best job I can to make that person as comfortable as possible. And I don't think I need to be putting that much effort into absolutely everything because it doesn't leave any room to just be me. And I hope, I trust that the people who love me and care about me do actually want me to be just me, and they've told me as much many times. But it's hard to do when your brain is so focused on everything else. that I've completely sacrificed knowing what it's like to just listen to my own voice, to listen to what I'm really thinking or really feeling around people, because there's so much noise. There's no chance of that genuinely happening. And I think it just comes down to safety, and a lot of it has to do with making sure people's perception of me is what I want it to be, that I'm a kind person, understanding, compassionate, a good listener, all of which are things that I am, but I'm a lot more than that too, right? Like I'm a full human being, but I've suppressed a lot of that, sacrificing deeper connections, sacrificing more honest, more real conversations so that I keep things even. I keep it steady, I keep it safe. So I feel like I have some control in a situation where I honestly don't. What I'm realizing now is that I don't necessarily know how to listen to my own voice unless I am alone. But I do think that having your own voice that is real, that is genuine, that is authentic, when you're around people who care about you or around people in general, is important. So I've begun experimenting with that. As I talked about what I do, that I am on, video for a large portion of my job, a lot of people talk about how scary it is to be on camera for them, which I totally respect, but for me it's kind of flipped. Being in front of a camera is so much more natural and easy for me than talking to someone in real life, because I don't have to worry about all of this constant perception control and the environment of the room and the tone and other people and all of that. It's just me. It's me sitting alone in the camera, actually telling a piece of me, actually showing a piece of who I am, and knowing that I'm gonna be able to edit that later to be safe, but at the same time, it also just comes naturally when I don't have to monitor for all of these other situations. In the past few months, as I've become aware that this is something that I do, as I have worked through a lot of things through counseling and just self-work and reflection, my threshold for being able to do that has started to shrink. My desire to want to do that has begun to dissipate. And after so many years of suppressing everything and controlling everything in my brain, I'm just tired of it. I'm just exhausted of doing that. The most powerful things for me has been to find situations where I can completely disconnect. And for me, that does involve right now being alone. And I mean actually alone. I mean away from my phone, not listening to music or an audiobook, not being on social media, not having text messages come in, but actually being alone and doing something purely for myself. I found a hobby that fits into this really well, and I've been doing it a few times a week, where I am completely disconnected from anything that would require perception management. Seeing how it feels to just sit with myself, to not try to think through things, to not try to work on myself, to not take pictures so I can show people later or anything like that, but to just breathe. And that has been really good for me, and something that I'm continuing to invest time and energy into, and that's begun to spill over into other areas of my life, where now that I have a taste of how it feels to just be for a second, now that I have a taste of how it feels to do something for myself where there is no perception management, knowing how I feel in those moments, getting more acquainted with who I am, I've started to be aware of what's going on in my brain. It's not gonna stop overnight, and to be honest, some of those tools are helpful. Some of them are good things to have in my toolbox, but just not to use 24/7. So when I notice that I'm running different scenarios of one just simple conversation I'm having with someone, not judging myself or being like, why are you doing that, Joe? But just being like, oh, that's what I'm doing here. Okay, I wonder if I can kind of tone that down a little bit. Instead of 5 scenarios, let's try to go to 2 or 3, right? Just bit by bit, trying to knock that down, and also really investing time with people who I don't feel the need to do that with. There are very few select people in my life that I feel that way with, or at least feel that way to some extent with. And they are the people that I choose to spend the majority of my time with. One of my biggest fears with unlocking this door, actually being aware of the fact that this is something I do all the time. I've been very afraid that because I've spent so much of my time trying to be a likable person, and I feel weird saying that out loud, but I know it is something that I have done for my own personal safety. It feels nice to be liked, it feels safe to be liked. I think a lot of the things I've done in my life have revolved around wanting to feel safe in a world that, isn't. And as I've had just a few select moments of some of the walls that I've built up dissipating, of being more honest in conversations, in maybe being more assertive than I normally would be, or more outspoken about something that I care about, still in a respectful way, but instead of backing down immediately, maybe I continue to say my thoughts on it. And as I've done that, terrified, certain that they're gonna hate me, right? Or like think like, wow, Joe's really a bitch, you know? And seeing that doesn't happen, seeing that even if I go too far, even if I get too vehement, or if I step over a social boundary or whatever, that the people are gonna tell me, they're gonna talk to me about it. I know that I'm around people who care about me enough to be like, hey, that conversation we had the other day, you didn't seem like yourself, or you got angry, that was kind of weird, can we talk about that? Like, I know that the people that I'm experimenting with this with are people who will have conversations with me if I do something that hurts them, that offends them, if I cross over a line that I did not intend to step on, and I know that they'll tell me. So I've continued experimenting with that, and I wanted to put this all in video form because A, I don't think I'm the only one who does this, who has this constant inner hard drive, all fans running, working so hard in every situation that involves another human being to manage every single possible everything. Like going through the pandemic, having to wear masks, obviously not something that's comfortable, but just specifically talking about the mask aspect of things, it was kind of nice that in some situations with people, in some interactions, I didn't have to worry about how my face looked as I was saying things. Like it was one variable that I could adjust for and be like, okay, I don't have to worry about what this half of my face is doing. Excellent, cool. Now I just have to worry about every other thing, but that one thing is off my plate. And it was kind of a relief. And realizing that not having to worry about my facial expressions and thinking about those as I'm doing it was a relief was kind of bizarre. As I have continued to mentally work through just different situations and trauma in my life, I've begun to make peace with the fact that I don't have to be liked by everybody all the time, and I don't have to make everybody 100% comfortable 24/7. It's alright if some things are uncomfortable. I don't have to eradicate the possibility of that at every possible turn. I cannot control other people. And that's never been my goal. I've never gone into any conversation being like, I'm gonna control this. That like grosses me out to think about. But in my own mind, I am definitely super focused on every piece of control I possibly do actually have to make it the best it possibly can be. And I've begun dropping that, and it's scary and it's uncomfortable, but it's also been a huge breath of fresh air and a relief. And I wanted to share this to ask if you do this too, or if this sounds totally foreign. It's bizarre to me to think that there might be people out there, I don't know, you might be listening right now, who just talk to people, who just like have conversations, and that's it, right? Like who talk to people, and it's not like this exhausting kind of process. I'm really interested to read the comments on this video in particular. I don't think I'm alone in this. And if you're listening to this now and you feel the same way, you're not alone in it. And it's something that I'm working to harness the good aspects of, right? Like the peacekeeping skills that I have, like to keep those things, but to maybe begin to let go of doing that all of the time in every situation, to let down some of those controls built up in my brain. And it's a journey that I imagine will continue for a very long time, because we don't learn new things overnight, generally speaking, especially when they are habits that have been ingrained for 30 years. And now, my dear and darling internet friend, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to this. And also one final thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for keeping this a channel live and running, for your generosity and your kindness, for believing in me and supporting me. Thank you. To each and every one of you watching this right now, I really appreciate you being here. You could be anywhere else in the world doing anything else, but you chose to hang out with me for a few minutes today, and I really appreciate that. I love you guys, I'm thinking about you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys. Bye!
Haven't heard from the sky all about it. Down the river, high tide flows around it. Through the whispers of pines, I hear them sing. The more you love, the more you live.
Discapacidad Televisión.
Hola mundo.
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006.
Acéptame como soy.
Hola, bienvenidos a Cambiando el Mundo de Personas con Discapacidad.
No cambiaremos el mundo teniendo igualdad.
Mi nombre es Raquel Quesada y seré la presentadora del mismo. En el programa hablaremos de la no discriminación, la participación e inclusión plenas y efectiva en la sociedad, a la igualdad de oportunidades de los derechos y a la accesibilidad de las personas con discapacidad, el respeto a la evolución de las facultades de los niños y las niñas con discapacidad y sus derechos a preservar su dignidad, la inclusión, la sensibilidad, la educación, la diversidad. En este programa todos los sábados celebraremos las vidas de las personas con discapacidad. Que juntos podemos cambiar el mundo de personas con discapacidad.
Hola, bienvenidos a Discapacidad Televisión. Recuerda suscribirte para no perderte los últimos estrenos y programas en vivo. Danos un me gusta, y así nos ayudarás a conocerte mejor y saber qué programación es tu favorita. Por favor, no te olvides de compartir, así, más personas podrán disfrutar de Discapacidad Televisión y toda su programación. Muchas gracias.
Discapacidad Televisión.
Hola mundo.
Primer canal de televisión dedicado al colectivo de personas con discapacidad desde 2006.